There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Come on. All right, I know, 2 seconds. Hang on, just stand still. Stand still. 1 second. Just okay, go. Nice. Boys, hang on, boys.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
Oh, sweetheart. Can I give you a hand?
No thanks, Dad. I got it.
Okay. I'm gonna go fix the lamp in your room.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
All right, give me a spot. You know my motto, safety first.
They could be dangerous. I think we should call animal control.
Animal control?
To be safe.
Don't worry.
Just...
I got this. It's a new motto.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Switch to Energy Star light bulbs, and you'll realize just how much cash you are really burning through. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov.
Have you ever helped a fellow veteran?
Of course.
Yes.
Have you ever asked for help yourself?
It's always tough, right?
I always feel like I can solve my own problems, but eventually, you just can't deal with it on your own.
And you start to question, maybe people would be better off without me. When you realize that you're not alone, once you take that first step, there's so much support.
Hey, you going out like that?
Yeah, why?
Well, what would the neighbors think?
I see you! Come look at Mr. Feather. Look what I have. Mr. Bird, remember? Bark, bark, bark. We're just playing. We're just playing on trying to get you out of here.
Even still.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Cracked out.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Are we good there, Scott?
How are we looking, Scott?
15:01, 19. All right, we're good. We're live? Okay, we're going to get the monthly meeting for the Paxton Planning Board underway. Today is May 19th, 2025. We're currently located at the Public Safety Complex in Paxton. Wait, I see that we do have 3 members present in person and 1 via Zoom, so I will declare that we have a quorum and the meeting is open. So the first order of business this evening is to approve the minutes from April 7th. I would entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Everything looked pretty straightforward, Brooke. You did a good job. I mean, it's
very clean.
yeah, it's good. I mean, you don't have to be as specific. I'm just, if you get bound up with time, whatever, but that's where we are. We had the hearing, we opened the hearing, closed the hearing, we discussed with the public, and then we had a motion. So if everything's in order with everybody, I'll call for a vote. Jason, you can participate in this, my friend. I'll do it by roll call, so Jason?
I approve.
Okay. Bruno?
Yep, approved.
David?
Approved.
And I approve also, so 4-0. Okay, so that takes care of that order. The next order is we have a submission by one of our board members. So he will be sitting supposedly on the other side of the table. We have an A&R request from Jason Burgess at 16 South Street, referencing town map or assessor's map 12, lots 65A, to turn into lots 63, 63D, 63G, and 65A into 2 lots. So, Jason, I know you're away, and I'm going to ask you to kind of just give us a thumbnail sketch as to what's going on here with the plans we have before us.
Absolutely. So I'm taking technically 6 different lots right now and combining the 3 larger portions and then making 2 more viable lots. There's certainly some wetland and terrain challenges with the property, so the previous owner wasn't able to build it as it was divided, so we're redividing it and utilizing property I had owned to make it more feasible to build on without disturbing wetlands, the main issue.
Okay, so looking at the lots, do they have frontage on South Street or on West Street?
Both. So one lot will have its over 300 foot of frontage on West Street. The other lot has a little over 200 foot of frontage on South Street.
All right, so on your plan, I see one has a frontage of 139.2 and then another one of 64.6, so that gives us 203.8.
Yep.
Okay, so that's good there. And you're getting rid of the old lot line because you're combining those 2 lots to make lot 1, which is roughly 18 acres?
Correct.
Okay. So where are the other lots? So where, I'm trying to find them on the map here. Jarvis did not include the existing.
You got a sliver right here.
Right, we have.
There's 2 small slivers on either side of the Clifford property that are still separate.
Okay.
We went back and forth on it, to be honest, about whether or not to include them. We decided to keep them separate, and maybe, approach the neighbors to see if, they want to purchase those small slivers. It's kind of a very strange arrangement there, the way it was divided up years ago, but so we kept those 2 separate.
Okay, so again, we don't have a designation of lots here, meaning 63D, G, and A, and 65A. We just have lot 1 and lot 2. And again, I know you're driving, so I'm trying to get a handle on where's.
So Jason, the slivers stay as is, just slivers by themselves.
Correct. Those haven't changed. The 2 small parcels either side of the Clifford property, which is on the corner of South and West.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. So then we have Fournier deed book, page 45. That doesn't give me a designation of a lot. So
that's an existing neighbor.
Okay, and then what's the next lot coming toward your existing house? It says lot number 2. 80,919.
That would be the proposed new lot.
All right, so that's 65A and 65A into 2 lots. No, this is 65A. All right. All right.
Those 65, the 63A, B, C, or D and E, I think were the 5 parcels that, I had purchased in addition to the lot I had already owned, which was 65A, was the lot I live on.
All right, you live on 65A.
Correct.
All right, and then the old lot that goes out onto West Street, which is now going to turn into a single lot, it says lot number 1 at 18 1/4 acres. That was 63 D and G?
I believe that's correct. I don't have it in front of me, but.
All right, that's fine. And then the lot you're proposing to make as lot 2 will be a little over 1 3/4 acres, so there's more than 60,000 square feet. I don't see R factors established here from Jarvis. Residential B, blah, 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 40. So I call your attention to that. Okay, there's not an R factor that's recalculated for your existing lot, taking out that 85-foot of frontage, nor is there R factors on 63, lot 1, 65A, I guess. So there's a couple deficiencies here. What are you
looking for in the R factor?
Well, usually when the surveyors do the survey, they, according to our zoning regs, we need an R factor, which is the sum of the perimeter squared divided by some factor, and it has to be greater than 0.4. So when you cut the piece out of your existing lot, we need to make sure that your R factor is greater than 0.4, which it probably is looking at this. And then the new lots that come out onto West Street, we have this, there's an R factor, wait a minute, length, no, radius, that's a radius. There is no R factor on here. So at this point, I think it might behoove all of us if we take no action on this and continue it to next month. Is that okay with you?
I guess if you need that, yeah,
well, I can, right, but once you get back in town, I mean, I can meet with you and we can go over this and get it cleaned up so that next month it comes back, we should be all set.
Right.
You're not under the gun to start anything, are you, right away?
No, not necessarily. We're trying to get it going, of course.
Okay, so why don't we do that at this point? We'll take no action.
So let me just for clarity, Jason, what we'll end up with is your existing house will be on its own lot. You'll have lot 1, which is a new lot, then lot 2, which is also a new lot, and then 2 slivers.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, that makes the 5 lots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right.
It'll be 4 lots total.
Well,
1, 2,
But
3, 4. No, you're going to have 5.
2 buildable lots.
Yes, 2 buildable lots and 2 slivers, and your house.
Correct.
Counting your house as a lot.
All right, so yeah, we're counting your house as a lot.
That would be combined with the 18 acres, though. That wouldn't be separate.
Oh, your lot is being combined with the 18 acres. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Okay. So, okay.
We definitely need the R factor there. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 lots, 2 slivers and 2 buildable lots.
Yep.
Okay.
Which one is already built on?
Correct. Yep.
So it's 1 new buildable lot.
Okay, so at this point, I'd entertain a motion to take no action. We'll continue it to next month, and we'll go from there.
Second. You took the motion? I'll take the motion.
Okay, sorry. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, Jason, you understand what we're doing here, right? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we just got to get that. We couldn't just do that calculation right now, probably. Do you want to see that on there from the surveyor?
Yeah, it's got to be on the plan that goes to the Registry of Deeds, too.
Oh, okay.
All right, so anyway, when you get back in town, give me a call next week after the holiday, and we'll go over it just to make sure that it's all in compliance, and when you bring it back next month, we'll be all set.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, so we're going to take you out of the voting because you're the petitioner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have 3 with 1 abstention because he's the petitioner. All right, buddy, travel safe.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so that now brings us to the zoning bylaw review. Roberta Bryan is going to be joining us shortly to go over some proposed revisions or updates. We're still, the town meeting is the 16th of June, and we never, last month, took a vote to submit the changes or the updates that we had. We had the hearing, but we never took a vote to pass it on to the selectmen as a warrant article. So prior to her arrival, let's just go over a couple of discussion points. At the present time, on the use table, under residential A and B, we have no businesses being allowed in town by special permit. It's only allowed at the present time in the business zone. That's the only thing that we currently allow. Now, we've been kicking this around with CMRPC, the task force, about trying to become more business friendly. So I asked Tony if he would come to tonight's meeting to just shed some light on kind of where we stand with, currently there are no changes to the business zoning. So, and I don't want anybody listening at home to get concerned. We're not trying to change anything, pull a fast one. But to allow growth of business in town, we're kind of stuck. So could you just kind of give us a 5-minute little update as to what's happening with economic development?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, and I appreciate the opportunity and all the work you guys are doing. So I think you hit the nail on the head, right? The problem is there's literally no place to grow, you know? So we've had people approach us with small projects, big projects, you know, but it's not about, I want to be clear, it's not about revenue, right? I think people get hung up on the fact with economic development that the focus is just revenue, and it's just one piece of the pie, right? Revenue's one piece of it, but the other part, we talk about maintaining our rural charm, this and that. That's actually part of it. Because if you think about it right now, we lost 10 West. Like, to me, a business like 10 West is exactly part of the type of rural charm that we talk about. It's not, that doesn't mean no businesses. That doesn't mean, and that also doesn't mean the other side. It doesn't mean an Amazon warehouse next to a Cumbie Farms, right? So somewhere in the middle of that, a good example is we had a group of people in town who wanted to open an ice cream shop. And I've used this example a lot recently, but there was literally nowhere to put them. So we worked so hard to find them the tiniest space we could, which was a shed at Soccer Asylum. Went through all the processes to try to get them, you know, just to convert this into a, and weren't able to pull it off. There was a lot of red tape, you know, trying to get that to happen. But the point is, I think something like that, like an ice cream store, you know, a little, things that fit into the character of Paxton. The goal of this isn't to just make it the Wild Wild West. You know, our taxes are high, our taxes are getting higher. We've always justified that talking about the services we provide, right? But there's a point of diminishing returns where the taxes get so high that people start looking around and saying, what else am I getting for it? You know, the median age in town has actually gone down over the past 5, 6, 7 years. I think we're right around 36 years old or so, which Worcester County I think is 38. You know, so Paxton's a younger town. People want to have places to go that are close by. So we don't need it to be a full-blown, you know, overwhelm. We don't want to turn into Rutland. We don't want to turn into Holden. We want to bring things in that the people that are coming to us with ideas are people that live in Paxton. They're Paxton people who've been here for a long time. You know, I've heard comments recently that, you know, Paxton's never going to have businesses. But I don't agree with that. I don't think anybody on our committee agrees with that. We know we'll probably have a high failure rate, right? There's going to be a lot of projects that come our way. Our job is to package it up, get it to the people in Paxton, and let them decide if they want it or not. You know, if we hit 300, I'll be happy with that, right? You know, or 200, whatever.
But we'll keep bringing the projects in. But there actually are quite a few people out there who have ideas. But the things that I envision, you know, or the ideas that people have are things that fit into the community as it is, and that's the key. And, you know, there's a lot of questions about that, like, okay, does that add revenue? But again, it's not all about revenue. If you have the ice cream shop, if we're able to get that off the ground, you know, I think of things like when you're going to, you know, heading up to 190 and by Good Isles, the chocolate shop that's there, you know, little things like that fit into Paxton, like kind of home-based businesses that add to the character of the town, and there's just, you can't do it right now, to Neil's point. There's nowhere to do it, and you don't need to full scale, you know, open up the zoning, you know, not that I'm opposed.
No, we
to,
tried that.
Right?
We know what that answer's
Right.
going to be. We're good with that.
Yeah, and regardless of my opinion on that, I understand people that get concerns when things change really big, but to me, this is a really smart way to say, we got a lot of people doing a lot of work here, let's trust them. You know, we're nobody, no big business. This kind of, to me, should quell that fear, right? Now, if you go down this route with the changes you guys have proposed, that I've looked at them, you know, Cumbie Farms isn't going to come in, and Amazon Warehouse isn't going to come in. It doesn't fit into that process, you know. I get the concern with that if you just open wide open zoning and you worry about, you know, but this is a review process, a special permit process. It really allows us to have options. If I could go back in time and have this in place when the people who've lived here longer than I have that wanted to open the ice cream place, we would have had a lot of options for them. They have contractors in their group. You know, there could be someone here who's ready to leave Paxton who wants to sell their house. It could, you know, what's the difference between selling it to them and selling it to another person? You know, so again, if you take your mind off of just the revenue, I get it. That doesn't, you know, if you take a resident out of that house and put a business in, no, it doesn't necessarily increase our property tax revenue, but it adds to the character of the town. It makes people want to live here. It makes it a better place to live. It makes your property values better. So, you know, if you can, I heard someone tell me before, like, if you can die by 1,000 cuts, you can survive by 1,000 Band-Aids, right? And then once you do, you can get a lot stronger. That's kind of where we are right now, is, you know, we really need to do something. And I just think this is it fits with the people who are coming to us and, you know, and asking to find a place in town to just open a small business that I think people in Paxton would really, really like. You know, we've had people who are therapists and have practices like that who rent space in Worcester right now who would love to have like a home type of setting here. You know, again, I don't know if that really happens under this or whatever, but it's things like that that just are not necessarily even noticeable. And if they are, they actually do fit in. So
Okay, so to just kind of follow up on that, there's a couple things that are going to probably want to be discussed, so I'm going to put them out there now so that people can think about it before we get to the town meeting.
Yep.
The first point that I see is the not in my backyard. It's great as long as you don't do it near me, but I think if we go through a process of review with zoning and special permit process, and I'll use the example that somebody has a home, they leave, they sell it to, let's just say, a physician who wants to have a few patients come at a time. So if we set restrictions that there couldn't be more than 2 patients at a time, you would never really know what's going on in that residence. So we could limit hours, we can limit number of cars that could be present, just things along that line. So it really doesn't change what I would say the flavor of the rural setting and this and that. We're not going to open it up that you can have 12 cars parked there and everybody sitting in your waiting room, you know, for the next appointment, whatever. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I agree with you that the revenue does not change drastically, because if you have a property, regardless of what it is, and let's just say it's assessed and it generates $2,000 in tax, real estate tax, when that transfers, it's probably going to still stay at $2,000 in real estate taxes. However, if it turns into what I'll use the term a cottage business, something in that structure, the equipment that's used to run that business is then taxed. So you're going to pick up a marginal increase. So the $2,000 for the real estate and the personal property might be another $500. So yes, we're increasing, but again, so slow, it's like a pebble at a time, but it is having a positive effect to increase the revenue stream to the town. So with that, I kind of agree with it. from the zoning standpoint, Roberta Bryan has joined us now. Can we just get some input? Because you and I have been on the task force. We understand what we're looking for and trying to do. So at this point, we're discussing.
Absolutely, yeah, but I think Tony brings up a good point that we're discussing based on real-life proposals that have come to us very informally, but can I do this, and what can I, where can I do it? And as we know, our business district is small, compact, and full, really, with businesses. So some of the proposals that came through were home-based businesses. Some of them were standalone businesses. And I think that in order to change the ability of the town to react to those in a positive way, what we thought was maybe more appropriate for the town of Paxton was to have it go through the Zoning Board of Appeals as a special permit. So I would say some of the businesses may come in and say, I just want to start a small personal service business. It's not in a home, it's not home-based, and here's a proposed area. If it meets, all the criteria of the underlying zoning, and the neighbors approve of the design and the lighting and the parking, and it's really not a change to a residential use. I agree that I don't think anyone's looking to build a Cumberland Farms, including Cumberland Farms. I think that should be up to the town and the residents on a case-by-case basis, so that we don't turn away businesses that have an established family or history here in Paxton and have a good idea, and it might just not fall in our current business zone. It might be a little outside of it, but it might be in a rural area. And when I look at the zoning table, there are things that we didn't include as being allowed to locate in a general residence B or A district. And one of them, is like a little campground. And again, I think that can be very tastefully done in a very open area. I think it's an amenity of the town. I'm not suggesting anyone is proposing a campground, but I think those are things that add value to the town, don't have a lot of impact to the town. It's a destination. And those are just things that I think we should think about allowing if they are proposed through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And there's a number of them in here that we could take individually. Our thought was to, with the support of the planning board, to look at the use table, make some suggestions, call it out as a separate article so that folks could really take a look at it. But again, keeping it in the purview of a regulatory body still.
Okay, so to, again, follow up on that, because we're discussing, could you give us, I guess, a recap of what the special permit process might be for any one of these things that we're considering?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say I want to have a nail salon at my house. Okay, my wife wants to have a nail salon. So at most we would do, so I'm going to come to the zoning board, I'm going to file the paperwork for a hearing.
Mm-hmm.
What happens then?
All the important information is on that application, including how many people that you can serve at one time, so how many sort of chairs you would have, or how many seats or workstations that you would have. The Zoning Board of Appeals in a home-based business would ensure that the changes to the exterior of the home would not make it look like a commercial business, that we're not expanding your driveway to accommodate more people, that they know that there's no on-street parking, that there's no, that the hours are set to a neighborhood-type setting, so it's not super early in the morning, it's not super late at night, there's no garish signage or lighting. So it should look like a home, even if you're having people come in for services, and that number of people should and can and would be limited by the Zoning Board of Appeals, so that it's not offensive or doesn't interrupt someone's life as a neighbor.
Okay, and as the process starts to unfold, the neighbors, all abutters are notified within 300 feet, I believe, of the existing or the proposed property.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we would have people that could come that it may, let's say, directly affect because they're going to live near it, so they could come and voice concerns and things along. Everything would be taken into consideration. We would be willing to listen to concerns and issues and possibly address them to keep the character of that setting. And I don't know where the property is. It could be anywhere in town. I think it's more, conducive to residential B versus residential A, because the lots tend to be a little bit larger. So if you have a 20,000 square foot lot with a driveway on it right now, and you're looking at, parking 3 cars or 2 cars in it, and as you said, we really don't want to expand driveways and impervious surfaces to accommodate the proposed business, we would need to make it a little more undetectable. So I think residential B might lend itself to that, unless you have something that you think might fit into residential A. Just an example, I'm not...
I think of the ice cream, and I think if someone wanted to locate a small building on a parcel in our immediate downtown area that's not currently zoned business, and we could figure out through, I think, the changes that we're making to shared parking and off-street parking and parking on adjacent parcels would be helpful to that, as well as just looking at how people interact in the downtown already. If they're at a baseball game and they're already parked, they could walk to that ice cream. But right now, there aren't any that I'm aware of business-zoned parcels available to build on. So we would be driving the ice cream place out to the larger...
Away from, okay, so Tony, can you enlighten, I know where the proposed site was, but just give me some idea as to what obstacles were presented that it just couldn't work out. I'm assuming it was at the health club.
It was.
Okay,
yeah.
so we're at the...
I mean, if I'm being candid, the obstacles really came down to, I'm trying to be diplomatic.
No, go ahead.
It really, so they had just paved the parking lot, so I want to give the Soccer Asylum people a lot of credit. They had just paved their parking lot, but there was some concern with plumbing, and that, there was going to need to be, for some reason, a grease trap put onto the septic, and so they had to dig up the parking lot. There were just a lot of red tape, I think, that wasn't necessarily expected, because it'd be a seasonal business anyway. They chose not to pursue it this year, because by the time they got through all of that, so they may revisit it for next year.
Okay.
But again, I think it wasn't an ideal property. To Roberta's point, the location itself, I mean, I don't want to say an ideal property. It wasn't an ideal structure.
Okay.
Having all the foot traffic from Soccer Asylum was probably the biggest selling point. I think if you push something like that out of the downtown zone, they probably wouldn't do it, because then you'd really require a lot of parking, right? So if you would rely on all the foot traffic from Soccer Asylum, from Little League games, things like that. Those are things that were important to them. So.
Okay. Speaking as a past business owner in town, my wife ran Coffee on the Common for almost 20 years, and we did in fact have ice cream, and I will speak to the subject of Little League games. People would walk up and get ice cream and go back and watch the game, or after the games were over, the coaches, if there was a winning season, would come up with their team members. And, we felt, yes, we were benefiting from the business, but we were also serving the purpose of being in town so you didn't have to go somewhere and it became more of a chore. So, I would be in favor of something, along those lines, as long as it fits into, either the current business zone or something that may be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So, comments, questions?
No, sounds good. Sounds like the red tape was more of local property and making decisions on private property there of Soccer Asylum.
Yeah, kind of like the landlord.
It wasn't really town red tape.
No, I think it was kind of inspection driven, things that they, so without, again, I'm not trying to disparage anything.
No, I think there was a lot of state law compliance that was hard in that, like ADA, handicap parking right near it, as well as accessibility, like people walking up the hill, because you'd have to go up to where the pool used to be.
2 levels, yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough site, but a great idea.
They might still be able to do it, right? But it's not, again, it doesn't make sense to do it this year. And again, if they were able to have other options, too, within town, but that's, and again, that's one of 5. There's a lot of other people who are interested in at least, considering small, things like that in Paxton that fit really well with the character. So.
Okay. Another situation was brought to my attention, and that is the current 10 West property. Someone had said or thought that property is not necessarily in the business zone, and as I reviewed the current zoning map as it stands today, and there are no proposed changes to the commercial business zone in town, I believe, under my research, that in fact that 10 West property is a separate parcel of land, and it's connected to, supposedly, to Town Hall. There are issues going on there, but I believe it was a pre-existing non-conforming use, in that prior to 10 West, there was the Paxton Police Department was there, and prior to the Paxton Police Department, there was Helen's Beauty Salon that had been there for, I'm going to say, since Hector was a pup. I mean, she was a mainstay in town. A lot of people would go there for haircuts and things like that, women, you know, for hair styling and things like that. So I believe that that business property, from what I was able to research, was a pre-existing non-conforming use, so it would have been grandfathered, and that's why when 10 West came in after the police department left, there were no major issues with it. So I'm pointing that out because, as I said, it came to my attention since the last meeting that was something that we need to make sure that, first of all, if the town wanted to sell it, because I've heard it at a lot of meetings, that, hey, why don't we just sell it and let it go? Well, we'd have to be very careful from a special permit process as to what we would allow in there. But I would say, legally, it was a business that was there at various times over the last, 50 or 60 years. And I don't see any reason why it couldn't be considered a commercial property, even though at the present time it's not in the current business district. So just wanted to kind of get that out there for discussion, particularly as budget discussions go forward and revenue sources and how to raise money and this and that and again, Roberta, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you kind of, if it was pre-existing, you would not see any reasons for not allowing another business in there if it were to be sold, or? I put you on the spot, I apologize.
No, it's, I assume that was the reason why it was Land and Sea, and then it was 10 West.
Yeah, that's right, it was another one, yes, that's right.
I'm assuming that because it wasn't really a change of use, and it was pre-existing, as a pre-existing non-conforming use, and then the special permit runs with the applicant, that we could just continue to allow retail sales out of that, because it pre-existed the zoning.
Correct.
And I'm sure at the time that zoning occurred in Paxton, no one thought it was going to be anything other than what it was originally.
It was a beauty salon, right? And then you're right. I forgot Land and Sea.
Land and Sea, right?
Yeah, but we were going through the uses, then it was there. So you new fellas aren't familiar with the history of the property, but that's kind of what had happened there. So, all right. Any other comments, questions?
No, this was super informative. I mean, we have a meeting coming up this week for economic development, and these are topics of conversation. So the 10 West information was really helpful. But just this general discussion, again, this is, I'm at a loss for probably the right words, but to me, this is how it should work in a town like this. You're putting it in the hands of the people that live here. I know you put it in their hands to vote, but we get really low voter turnout. So when you only put it in the hands of the people to vote, obviously that's important, but this is another process outside of that, or in addition to that, I should say. Obviously this has to pass, but once it's passed, the entire town, anybody in any pocket of the town who has an idea, and that idea fits, and the people around it feel like it fits, and it goes through a board, it goes through a lot of layers of approval, so that should just really quell those concerns that people are just going to barge their way in. That really just gives you the ability to have some really cool things in town that make it just an even better place to live. That's the energy that gets me running, doing the economic development stuff, and that I just think it's great.
Well, and I commend you for the efforts, because it's been kind of discouraging the last year or two, or three, whatever. I mean, you keep beating your head against the wall, and it's like nothing's going to happen. So maybe our last attempt at the special town meeting was painting with too broad a brush. Now maybe we need to look at individual situations. So do you have discussion points or changes that you're talking about for the use table?
The list that I created from some conversations with Tony and with Heather and with you, Neil, were suggesting that a retail business, a restaurant or similar, a personal service establishment, and a place of amusement entirely inside would all be allowed in their respective sections under a special permit, whereas currently In GRA and GRB, it's simply no.
So are you proposing both districts, A and?
I am, because I think when you look at the map, and again, we mentioned the last town meeting in November where our business district actually really mirrored our GRA district, along Pleasant. So I want to be more thoughtful and say that there could be businesses that don't want to be in there because they're not driven by a baseball game, being downtown, and they would still be welcomed in town, but maybe in a larger area. So that's where I think GRB and GRA, to give both options for the different types of businesses that might come into town.
Okay, and just to help with understanding, the current GRA, as it stands today, is a 1,500-foot circle around the monument on the town common, and then it proceeds all the way down 122 from the center of town, that 1,500-foot circle, all the way down to the Worcester line on any property that immediately abuts the road, 122. So it's on both north and south or east and west of the 122 road, but that's as far as residential A goes. Everything else is residential B.
Correct.
And we have requirements, minimum requirements for lot sizes. Residential B is 60,000 square feet. I don't believe at the present time there might be one or two GRA lots that are still undeveloped, but they would fall into the 20,000 square foot size. And to have a business that we're kind of talking about here, where you may end up with 6 or 7 cars frequenting at some period, that may not lend itself to being a good thing, we'll say, or an approved type basis. So I think we're looking more at residential B. But if you want to put them, I'm all in favor of that.
I do, because I think, again, some may not require that, those amount of cars, like people do, I just think the flexibility, we would be better off being more flexible and then allowing the neighbors, the town, the inspectors, the zoning board to weigh in rather than hemming ourselves into another corner only to have someone want to put something on a smaller lot that people are approving of, but the bylaws don't even allow us to hear it.
Fine, okay. And again, the permit process allows for those discussions to take place.
If there's a special permit. When there's a no in the use table,
It doesn't.
there's no conversation.
Okay, so I guess before we wrap this up, what we're proposing as the task force is to amend the current use table under residential A and B, that by special permit, some of these ventures or opportunities that someone may be looking at might be able to be reviewed. Because at the present time, it's not. You're just stuck.
Do we define the body and the people who review it?
It would be the zoning board, and it would come before planning if there's any movement of earth or reconfiguration, because we get to look at site plans, lighting, and screening.
Right, I just think that's important because
it is.
Someone who reads that who can't get to the details of what's involved may assume that it'll just be rubber stamped. We don't want, that's not the case, and you don't want a large majority assuming that, and then we get what we had last time.
And then to help Brooke, who is going to start or receive the paper process, she is in no position to give a decision either way. That's why we have review boards, because several people have come in and said, can I do this, or tell me what I need to do, or is this okay? And her answer has to be, I will take all of your information and get it to the appropriate governing body, the boards, for review. So there will be a public process. Nothing is going to be done behind closed doors, which is right now the most important thing. Transparency is key to everything that we're looking at. We want the public involved. And it doesn't fall on deaf ears. I guess that's the biggest thing that I want to make sure that, people viewing this either tonight or after the fact understand that you are involved. As I used to say, it's your town, it's your vote. So we want to make sure that we get that input from everybody. Something to add. You're nodding, and I'm glad you're nodding, because we're heading on the right path then.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be clear that as much as economic development sounds so expansive and so, but this is kind of what we want, right? I think to your point, there's a lack of credibility right now. People don't want to say yes because they don't necessarily trust those of us making the decisions. I don't know how it got there. I don't know why it got there. It doesn't matter. The goal is to fix it. I think a process like this, I've been trying to poke holes in this all day, and of course nothing's perfect, but there has to be some trust at the end of the day. Like you said, things aren't going to be rubber stamped. I mean, I'll be very clear. I wouldn't want that. I live here too. I've been here 21 years. I'm not going anywhere. I don't think I can afford to go anywhere. I know my wife won't let me go anywhere. I just have this vision of a really cool town I want to live in based on my experiences and other people's experiences and the people I talk to. It's really nothing more than that, and this is exactly what it is, so I don't know. I like the idea of having both A and B available, only because there's such a robust review process. I don't anticipate a lot of things that would fit into A, but then I don't have the vision that every business owner has. Somebody out there has an idea that I'll never anticipate, none of us will ever anticipate, and it might be the most awesome thing that we want in town. Let's give them the option to file the paperwork, go through the multiple layers, get a yes, get a no, whatever. I think we have to start trusting that process a little bit, and this has so many guardrails on it. I don't see why we wouldn't trust this. I know I would, so.
Bruno, as a new resident, you've lived in town, what now, 4 years, 5 years? 3?
8.
Okay. All right, so, do you have concerns? Because you came from outside the area.
So, the only thing I might add to it is, and I don't even know if we could do this, would there be a stake where the person owning the business or running the business would have to be a current town resident? Or something along the lines of you would come up with a list of possible businesses that would be able to apply for the special permit?
Well, I don't think there's a clear and definitive answer. I guess what I would say is if it was an existing structure, something that's already there, and you wanted to buy it, let's just say, but you're not going to live in town, as long as you didn't change the character in a gross and magnificent way so that people would be upset, I don't think there should be a condition that you'd have to be a resident, primarily living in that space. So I'm not sure, but again,
the only reason I bring it up is because a salon, a hairdresser, something in the basement, something in the garage, you're living in town, you want to make some extra money, try and get up in life, I can see that.
Sure.
For anybody. You shouldn't have to leave town just to try and make a buck. And it's just how far would you want to go with transforming a residential piece of land for income? I don't know.
Okay. It's something, again, to consider. The other thing is if you were buying a piece of property, because there's still some vacant land in town, if you bought a piece of property, it wouldn't necessarily mean that you'd have to be a resident. You could live in an adjacent town, or you might be willing to travel, 10 or 15, 20 miles, I don't know, to get to the site. But if you went through the review process and we found something that fit the kind of the theme of the neighborhood that you're proposing, and I don't mean to say a neighborhood, I'm just saying, but the adjacent properties.
Yeah.
As long as it resembled what I would say like a residence or something, we're not going to ask you to build a Cumbies or whatever and hide it. But what I'm saying is, so if you made it look more domestic than commercial, I think that would help us. You have a thought, please?
No, I think it's actually a really interesting idea. I worry on one hand, could you run into lawsuits from that if people...
Discrimination?
Right. Well, there's so many weird things like that now. But the concept is actually really good. But just through the review process, would that be... this is kind of a weird question to ask, but if I come in and I'm trying to open a business and I'm just a jerk, if all the things line up and you're like, can you actually reject it just on the basis, it doesn't seem like somebody we really want running business in town?
Well, no, I guess...
I would actually fully support you doing that.
What, of being a jerk?
Well, I mean, if somebody just clearly doesn't care about, if they're moving to Hawaii and they're gonna just run, is it all just checking the boxes, or you could say, I just don't think this is a fit on an individual?
I guess the one example I would give you is the Dunkin' Donuts franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the business district, so we don't have any questions there. But the gentleman where the company that owned that has sold, meaning the ownership of that franchise has sold, I think, 2 or 3 times. And those businessmen do not live in town. They have 5 or 6 locations. They own the one in Tatnick, there's one in Holden, they own the one in Rutland. So again, you can't be a resident of each of those communities because it's more of a corporate entity. But it tends to fit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a business zone though. We're talking about the residential zones. Residential addresses, people that are going to list something as their homestead. And it's, how far would, when you open the door a little bit, what does that mean? How much further can that door be pushed open? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the zoning board, there's guidance and guidelines that they follow, right? And so you do have to stay within that. You can't just make up your own rules. You'll open yourself up for lawsuits.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm just, like if you say no to something and the town wants to say no, what kind of things would that potential person be able to open up for a lawsuit?
Well, again, we would have hours of operation, number of clientele, hours, I said hours of operation, number of clientele, alterations to the existing property. We'd have to look at lighting, we'd look at screening and things like that.
It's almost like limited growth.
Yeah.
But if you don't like the person, that's probably not going to fly, right?
Well, yeah, it's like, how do you back it? Well, I mean, the vast majority of our commercial real estate right now is not owned by town residents.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the vast majority of it's not. So it's interesting. But again, that's in the business districts. That's
the majority.
Right. We're talking
they
apples
run
and
well,
oranges now.
Right. I mean, most of the businesses I see around here run well.
Yeah.
It is an interesting idea, but yeah.
So, Bruno, if you would rather say you live in town now and you may want to buy another property in town to start some sort of cottage
if we were
business.
going to open up the door to this, maybe in the beginning, open up the door to town residents. If that's something we can even do, I don't know.
I don't think we can, but I have not looked into it. But I don't, it doesn't sound like something that I've seen before in any of the research we've done to try to make sure that this is best practices.
Right.
But I think maybe what's helpful is that we're not just opening up the whole use table to special permit, right? So, like, we haven't, gas filling stations, we're not saying that that can just be in a residential area. It's just very specific uses that we think, and again, I keep going back to the ice cream, could fit somewhere. I think of Flo's, which has changed hands, and not hands, but names, and now is the Haven, like, that's, again, they have a large property, driveway. Right.
Yeah.
We do have.
The first one that pops in my head is a place like that. There's several similar places in Paxton that could have gone that route.
Yep.
The option.
Yep.
But again, when you look at an instance like that, the big thing that allows that to be unnoticeable is the size of the lot. It flows, there's the farm there, so you have the long driveway in, so nobody sees what's going on. It's not an impact to the adjacent properties, because it's set so far back from the road. So again, when you go up there, you don't notice that there's 3 or 4 cars there, till you pull up and say, oh, I'm the 4th car.
But look at even House Farm Stand, which, is not in a business zone, is well frequented, by people, I think, from Worcester and Paxton and Rutland, people driving through. They do have a parking lot that can accommodate a number of cars, plus their gardening. I don't think it's out of place, really, with the neighbors across the street or even the neighbors on either side. I think it's just it's an amenity that's, placed in a residential area, and if the zoning board of appeals had a chance to permit something like that, we would probably permit it very similarly to how they operate it now, which is like 8 to 6. They're not open at night. They're very well. They have very good security, and they're just off the road, but yet they're visible. They have tasteful signage, So I don't see that as harmful in any other part of Paxton, a store like that. It is seasonal too, like the ice cream. So those are the types of things that I envision being acceptable to people that come to the hearings and say,
Why?
yeah, that would,
why?
yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. Right. Comment, anything else? Okay. You're good?
I'm good.
David?
Yeah, I'm good. Yep.
All right. So,
Could I ask it?
sir, yeah, oh, you stayed with us, okay. There you go, buddy.
So, as also a member of the Economic Development Committee, I would just also say that, in my nearly 40 years in town here, the businesses have been declining. We used to have more businesses than we do now. We used to have 3 gas stations. We used to have a restaurant, a bar. Many of the antique homes along 122 were all businesses at one point too, with blacksmiths and things like that. So, in my mind, some more of that I think is a great thing, something to work towards.
All right.
We used to have gas stations, huh?
Yeah, we did.
Jeez. Okay.
We did. So, all right, so Roberta, just kind of sum up what we're looking at in the use table. I'm going to put you back on the spot. We started with you just in terms of how we're looking at this, but if you could kind of describe it, and then we'll make sure Brooke has a copy of it, and we'll get it to Heather, because the warrant articles are going to have to be written very soon to get to town meeting standards, so to speak. It's going to have to be reviewed by legal, and then it'll be printed as an item, and you and I will end up discussing it at the town meeting.
Right. So, right now...
What page are you, just anybody looking at home in the current zoning?
Section 3.2.4, which, hang on, I can tell you what page that is. Starts on page 22 in the red line version that's on the town's website. Business and services. And I am proposing changing the items of retail business, which is 4.1, restaurant or similar, which is 4.3, personal service establishment, which is 4.6, and place of amusement entirely inside, which is 4.9. We had made prior to this in our early April meeting, we had made some changes. I think we had some good public comment to talk about reducing the size of golf courses to allow for some more flexibility with outdoor recreation. I'm not sure what else we covered that day. Try in your minutes.
It is.
Okay.
We had discussion about definitions and why we did what we did. We did talk about use table updates. We talked about golf clubs, recreational usage, dimensional requirements, common driveways, inclusionary housing, signage standards, and then parking requirements. Those were the big items that were discussed previously in April.
So I think that on the use table side, it was just the golf course that we really touched, and we didn't touch the use table so much as we just touched the size of the golf course that would be allowed. So we reduced it, so if someone wanted to construct a smaller golf course, that would be allowed.
Right. Would you like me to? I have it right here if you want me to insert. Okay, so under the use table, it was discussed, no decisions were made, but it was discussed for revised entries for uses such as restaurants, adult businesses, marijuana-related services to reflect state requirements, and clarification that inclusion does not mean endorsement. Zoning must legally allow for these uses. And then under golf clubs that we talked about, or currently require 200 contiguous acres by special permit. We were suggesting to reduce this acreage to increase flexibility, and we were going to discuss that with CMRPC and Jane. So, but other than that, I mean, the dimensional requirements were around MBTA, which is not in play at this point, so we don't have to worry about that.
Correct.
And common driveways. So that's where we were. So you have a suggestion then to amend that use table to include with special permit. Okay, and Brooke, did you get those discussion points? Okay, so we're good. All right, so then at this point, what I would suggest is when we finish tonight, please get that part to Heather so that it can get to legal to be reviewed to make sure we haven't forgotten something or stepped on somebody's toes that may lead to more discouragement when we get to the town meeting.
Roberta,
all right?
Did you want to talk about anything else from your email?
So
on the use table?
the other items, and one of them I'm still researching. Right now, the town doesn't allow in any district the construction of a two-family dwelling. And I know we have ADUs, but that's different, because that allows an existing home to add a small, like, in-law apartment, whether it's attached or detached.
Right.
But I just thought it's interesting that in no zone do we allow two-family dwellings.
So you would like to
Well,
add that?
I think I'd appreciate the planning board's opinion on it. I feel like it's another way, if someone wants to stay in town, to be able to afford, whether it's an, and certainly an owner-occupied, would be someone to help, pay the mortgage. But it's just, I know we have some multifamilies in town, and I think they're pre-existing non-conforming.
They are.
And somewhere down the road, we decided not to allow any more to be constructed.
Okay. Comments? I have no objections, but one of the things I would ask, at least we consider as we go forward with this, that it be owner-occupied. So if you're going to build a duplex, you have, as the owner of the property, you have to live in one side. That just allows a little more control for the other half of the structure, instead of, to use your words, having two jerks live in them and fight all the time. But we want to make sure that there's a little civility that can be looked upon. And if you're an owner-occupied, and it helps you, again, defray the cost of ownership, then I think that's a good thing to have.
Would that follow the sale?
Pardon me?
If the original owner were to sell it, the next
It would be in the zone, I think you could put it in the zoning bylaws that says.
Or it would be on the deed, a restriction, whatever, that if you're going to sell it and keep it as a duplex. And I'm thinking of two separate, mirrored image homes. So,
Well, is that defined? What's the difference between, you have a home and then you have a apartment above the garage? Two separate units?
Well, that's an accessory.
But, what's the difference? You're two-family dwelling, right? And
you have
what's
two units.
Oh, is it?
Versus
I think the
two-family
ADUs.
dwelling is ownership?
No, typically, no. Two-family could be, one on top or two units side by side attached.
Two units side by side.
Right.
A lot of times they're separate, leased separate mortgages and owned by separate people, right?
Well, sometimes if they're a co-op or a condo, you can certainly separate a multifamily into condos.
Yeah. So we got.
And then everyone would own.
We're talking about when we say multifamily.
Right, two-family, not multifamily. Right now, it just, oddly, it doesn't even say multifamily is excluded, it says two-family dwelling.
Right, you automatically jump to the assumption it's a duplex.
Yep.
Two-family.
Yep.
But there's a lot of two-family homes in town.
Hang on,
that
we do have
aren't
duplexes. We do.
Are they?
The senior on Forestdale Extension, those are all duplexes. And they're separate deeds for each side.
Yeah.
The senior, the 55 and older community on Forestdale Extension. There are 42 residents there.
But
There are 21 units.
I think that would fall.
And so we do allow it. Those are.
Well, that was part of a
grandfather.
Well, it was one of the processes that we went through. Went through when we approved it, 20 some odd years ago.
But that's I'm thinking of on a single lot, on a single family parcel, not a development like that.
Okay.
That if someone came in and said, I want to build 2 units, I want to live in one and I want to rent one, or I want to then sell them as individual condo units. We don't allow for that, and I'm curious if anyone knows.
I'm more in favor, though, of the owner-occupied versus if you sell it, and then somebody's saying, well, I'm going to break it up, and I'm going to sell the left, and I'm going to then sell the right. That's, I think...
So it'd be a single deed, and then if they ever wanted to break it up, it would be axed.
Right, so there would be a restriction on the deed, is that if we permitted that to go, that would be something I would strongly suggest we register with the...
So what's your preference, not to have...
Currently, there's restrictions on if you have a home and then an apartment.
Well, that's by law now.
As part of that, that's allowed.
Correct.
There's certain restrictions on how big that apartment can be.
Correct.
But you can't sell that separate
Right.
apartment, whether it's detached.
So the point is that is allowed right now.
By law.
But you're right in that it's a restricted size, right? And it's either, it's a restricted size.
Is it still restricted, or has that been expanded?
No, I think it's still restricted, yeah.
It's by size. It's under 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think so, or a certain percentage of the size of the home, yeah.
Yeah, so one step is to expand that and allow for a greater footprint where both halves could equal each other.
I guess
Right?
that's kind of, that's how I'm thinking the duplex.
But still owned by one owner who lives in one of them. Right, and then to expand it even further, now you.
So that would be different though, David, because I think what you would be then saying is you could have one parcel of land and build two houses of similar size, whereas I'm thinking of this as one structure, so one.
Common firewall between.
Right, one roof.
Yep.
Two access points, two separate units, but in one building.
Like a singular foundation.
Technically, you can do that now, except you're restricted on the square footage of the accessory unit.
But I don't think anyone would build, I'm trying to picture it in my mind. You wouldn't build a two-story unit on one side and then a one-story on the other. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I think you got to you back it off and say, what's our current rules that we allow? And we allow for building a second unit within the main building, right?
Okay.
We're restricted to.
There is one
square footage.
You're only allowed one septic system on a property.
Yep.
So that's where the common foundation comes in, and everything goes out through whatever to one system. Even with an ADU that's detached, it has to find its way back to the original septic design. You cannot create another system on that property, regardless whether you have 10 acres or whatever. Can't do it. There's only allowed one septic system.
And I don't think you would need to with a traditional two-family, and even if you sold that as two different units, you could still have an agreement that you both are responsible for maintaining that system. And again, I'm not advocating, I'm just saying it's odd to me that we specify two-family and it's no throughout all of them. But if there's some history to it, or the board feels like, let's start with ADUs and come back to that later, I'm good with it. It was just an oddity, and to me, that we just said no.
Okay, so then, I guess because we're on the clock right now for the town meeting.
Yep.
Do you want to ask to include duplexes, common foundation, single septic system, owner occupied? Or do you want to just leave it for further investigation till we get to the fall with the other stuff that has pending?
And I think you do have to define, what do you mean by duplex? Is it two owners, two separate owners, or is it one owner of the whole thing with a unit to be occupied by a
So if
second
it's
family?
owner occupied, I would say it's one owner and an income property that's there.
So just to peel that onion a little bit, so if you built a two-family, but you built it with the intent to sell both units, that's not allowed either.
Correct.
So we're not allowing smaller, less expensive homes in Paxton with this, just to be clear.
Right, but you are specifying owner occupied, so if you sell it, the new owner occupies.
Has to occupy.
Yes, yep. So one would own and one would rent. I don't have a strong feeling either way. I just think it's something that we should think about as our town's demographics change. And
or you live in one side and you have your little business in the other side, and it looks like one structure.
Yep.
With two separate entrances, two parking lots. You know, I mean, when you come in, you park in. If you drive up into Forestdale, you'll see that there's a circle. And the reason it worked right now is there's a common septic system for all of the units.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So, and that's got away from having two, septic systems on an individual lot and whatever.
How big is that pipe?
It's huge. I believe it's an 8-inch pipe into a treatment facility, and then the leaching water is pumped up into a leach field, and they are responsible for maintaining it.
Oh, wow.
And we have an insurance policy, so to speak, against future failure. When they sold each unit, there was a deposit made by the initial purchaser. I believe it was $5,000 per dwelling, so $2,500 for each side. So there's almost 200 grand put aside right now. And it's in an interest-bearing account. It's been there for...
And that was specified by the planning.
It was,
Right.
because we were so concerned that we'd have 60 or I can't, 34 units, or let's say 68 people, and they'd all be displaced if the septic system failed.
So I mean, I think now if someone wants to do a project like that, they would have to come to this planning board, and there are certain restrictions that are on the books now. And I think until you lift those restrictions, there has to be a lot of thought into it and research on what other towns have had success with this or have not had success.
Well, I can say that the Paxton model of having enough space in the original project for a second system has been used by a few communities. So they're aware of that. If they don't have sewers in town, that they know they have to accommodate. If you're putting in, 30, 40, 50 units, and there could be 100 people, that you have to have adequate backup or reserve in case of a catastrophic failure. Soil gets plugged up, doesn't work, whatever, what are you going to do? We also have that at the Highlands over by Anna Maria. When that development went in, again, that's a common system, but that's more of an apartment-style complex. But there is 100% space available to replace the existing system if something were to go wrong.
And it sounds like a lot of times that's what it comes down to.
It does.
There's no sewers, so it's the septic system that defines it.
Or an on-site treatment plant, which is one of the things we've been reviewing for other matters in town. So if somebody wanted to put in 15 or 20 units and they didn't want to have they'd have to have a sewage treatment facility. So.
And then the only other one was just something that came up through a proposal very informally on a kennel, and we noticed that there's no limit to the number of dogs that can be kept in a kennel, whether it's non-owner occupied or owner occupied. And if you own the property and have a kennel on it, a commercial kennel, and you have greater than 5 acres, there's no
restriction.
There's no restriction, right? So there's no zoning board of appeal process to talk about
noise,
animals,
yeah, noise
like that, right? So just something to think about if we wanted to pick a number, or at least right now I would say the dog kennel greater than 5 acres does mirror the riding stable. That also doesn't have any restrictions, and that was a pretty healthy discussion with a number of people. So we acquiesced on that. But I don't know if the dog kennel, we want to keep it in the same vein, or we want to limit. We also don't limit the number of horses.
Right. So just to bring you guys up to speed where we were and how this came about, the Palatine Kennels a la Sweet Pea, which had the fire and everything burnt down. The Palatine Kennels was a pre-existing non-conforming use. They could have as many dogs as whatever the state said that they could accommodate. When it was destroyed by fire and then rebuilt, there are limits. I think they can have up to 40 dogs and 20 cats. So it's at the very edge of town on 122, right before you get to the Rutland line. And previously, there were not a lot of homes around there, but some of the development that's taken place on Brooks Road and then on Brigham Road and Pierce Circle and things like that, in the summertime when you have windows open and the dogs are outside, there's a lot of yipping going on, and you can hear it, particularly whichever way the wind blows. So we had discussions that some people have dogs, 2 or 3 dogs, and they may breed their dogs. So we got into the discussion of less than a year old, or less than 6 months old. So if you had a litter of pups and you ended up with 6 or 8 pups and you have 2 or 3, that's 10 dogs, but they're not of age, and your intent was to sell them and lower your quantity, that would be okay. I wouldn't call that a kennel. I would just call that that's a small business.
Seasonal.
Seasonal
small
right, in a residential area. But you can see, I mean, we're trying to be friendly, so that would allow that. But to have somebody say, I'll board dogs and whatever, we
We were just surprised that there was no limit. There's some description on they can't be within 150 feet of a property line if it's non-owner occupied.
Right.
In the premises is a minimum of 120,000 square feet. All good. It's just interesting that there's no maximum number of dogs you
There's
can.
some like state Board of Health regulations.
Well, the
I
only.
mean, it might be like so many dogs per square foot. If you have a kennel, it might be that, but are we?
What they had when the Sweet Pea thing went through was when they set up the kennels, the actual fenced-in areas of the dogs, they had to have so many square feet per, I'll use the word stall, but I don't like that, but per residence.
And who defined that?
The state. The state.
So it's already in place.
Yeah, that's already in place. Based on, we're going to get into this, and you've kind of touched on it, I would say if you're going to have a kennel, that we would limit it to 10 or less, or 8 or less, and so we don't end up with someone boarding, I don't know, a lot of dogs, and if they don't get along, because they're jerks, and they bark at each other, it would be something that, I mean, nobody wants to listen to that. But it's an income stream. It's a small home business.
Or in this instance, you can just, in any district right now, you can locate a kennel.
Special permit.
2.75 acres.
Okay, by special permit, though?
Yes.
All right, so then you could have a condition of, well, this is fine, but because of the proximity of neighbors, you're not as, oh, Jesus.
I would just rather not have the zoning board of appeals dictate how many dogs. But if it is a Board of Health and you do the math and say like on 2.75 acres, you can only fit a building of X size with a driveway and yards, and maybe that does get you to that number, but
And again, the state had open space versus kennels, I don't want to use, but where they would sleep and be covered and protected from weather and things like that. So they had to be able to get out to exercise, and then they had to be able to be housed. Again, there was requirements by the state. So, all right, so.
Sounds like they're covered by the state.
Right, yeah, everything would divert back to them or refer back to the state. Is that okay, or you want to keep going?
that's all I have. I just wanted some information
Like
on.
horses, I got to believe there's state Board of Health regulations for number of horses, right? If you have a 1 acre farm, you can't have 20 horses or 30 horses.
There are recommendations, but
You've seen all these things on the news where the SPCA comes in and rescues all these animals that are there illegally because nobody knew about them.
Okay.
So, but I mean, this town is pretty, neighbors, everybody knows kind of what's going on. Except for chickens.
Right.
Nobody knows where all the chickens are. So, all right, we're good?
That's all I had, yep.
All right. Any other comments? All right, thank you for attending zoning. Vote to approve the bylaws as discussed at the public hearing. So, we're going to amend last month's meeting with the things that Roberta has talked about. So, special permit in A and B. And then we're going to add in the definitions that we just discussed. And then I'm going to ask that the board take a vote to now approve those updates and send on to the select board to be included as a warrant article at the town meeting in June. Good? I'll entertain a motion. Jason, you want to chime in here, buddy?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you just clarify the special permit in A, B real quick? Sorry.
All right, no, that's fine. What we're going to do is allow for independent review of a petitioner that may want to open some sort of small, in air quotes, business that would not detract from the local character of the surrounding homes. Presently,
That could be for any business. I was just looking at that chart of all the different businesses. We're proposing for all of the different businesses?
No, Roberta, read off the one we had. Hold on. Where's my minutes? Right here. We had restaurants, retails, small service.
Personal service. Place of amusement.
And place of amusement.
Okay. Guess that's fairly comprehensive.
Right, and again, everything is reviewed. It's not guaranteed or by right or by anything. It has to go through the process.
Right, which I think is a good way to do it. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, you want to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve.
All right, second? Second. All right, Bruno, second. Any further discussion? Nope. All right, all in favor? Jason?
Aye.
Okay, Bruno?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And I vote aye also, so we're good with that. Now, that can be passed on to the Select Board to be included on the annual town meeting warrant articles. All right. So, next meeting to schedule, because we got to get Jason taken care of. Brooke, what do you have for availability of this room? And it's probably going to be after town meeting, correct? Because that's a Monday, that's the...
That's the 16th, yeah. It would have to be after that. One second.
So, if we do a Monday, then...
23rd?
It could be the 23rd? Anybody have objections to that at this point?
It works for me.
I think I'm good.
I won't be around that week as well.
Oh, are you going to zoom in again?
I could possibly.
Well, you're going to wait. You're the petitioner. We got to get you taken care of.
Yeah. We can't do the 9th, the second Monday?
Hold on. What do we got there?
I'm not here.
How's the 9th fit for you?
The 9th is good.
Yep. All right, let's,
So we would
when does
have,
Peter have school? BayPac, do you know?
I don't.
First and third? That's why he's not here tonight. So- All right, Jason, we'll try for the 9th. Okay, Bruno, can you zoom in if you had to? I mean, all right, so we'll do it that. We'll do it the 9th at 7 o'clock, okay? All right, so we're good. All right, at that point, motion, any old business that needs to come back, that nobody's come to you with anything, we're good? Okay, any public comments? Anybody else on Zoom? Is Jason the only one with us?
There was one other person, but
Are they
no
still-
comments or anything.
Okay. All right, then, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:18.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Jason?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, we're out of here. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Scott, can you kill the mics and all that good stuff?